Okay, I guess we can get started. I think there's only a few folks listening, but just wanted to start today. The lecture here is Preparing to Win. Thought I'd give some background first for everyone just to know who I am. Excited to talk to everyone. So I debated 8 years. Started at Lexington High. It's outside of Boston. Actually, Sarah, who's running this event, was my coach. You can see her on the far right of the top picture. Debated at kind of the national circuit level, but also had a lot of experience with novices and working across kind of debate camps and things like that. So lots of good experiences in high school. Went to Northwestern in Chicago and debated for 4 years and was fortunate enough to win the national debate tournament or national championship for college in 2015. And currently I work in investing at a small firm in Milwaukee and just finished my MBA at the University of Chicago. But yeah, so I am excited to talk today about preparation. Just thought it was an interesting topic because I think almost every round is won before it starts. So I think this lecture is really important because several people used to kind of come up to me with my debate background and say, hey, what do you think your greatest strength was? And I didn't like talking about myself. So I typically kind of just said, I'm not sure. It's not about me. I think you're usually successful because the people around you. And that's definitely true. The people around you in debate make a huge difference. But I thought thinking of coming up with some answer, this lecture is kind of that. I thought I was always trying to be the most prepared person in each debate room. Whether you're smart or fast speaking or anything like that, I think preparation can really differentiate you from others, and it makes a big difference. So just wanted to talk today about that topic, about preparation. I'm a big sports fan, so you'll see a lot of interesting quotes from sports. And just kind of what it means to prepare to win, because I think every round, like I said, is won before it starts, honestly. So there's going to be 4 different sections of this lecture or presentation, and then I'll try to leave some time for Q&A. But before I jump in, I think there's only 1 or 2 folks on the kind of webcast. Just wanted to see if you could type in the chat just to see if this works. Maybe how long you've been debating and where you're located, if anyone's actually listening. Okay, so far I think Nadia, maybe you may be the only person who's at least willing to respond. So that's awesome that you've been debating since middle school. And yeah, hopefully this lecture is helpful, and happy to answer any questions along the way from anyone, even as folks join and come in and out of the rooms, I'm sure. So I'll just get started then, jumping in. The first part of the lecture is about preparing yourself and what you can do to kind of best prepare yourself for debates, but also just different things to think about to be most prepared to kind of win debates. So the first kind of point in this section I want to talk about is just that it's important to kind of spend some time thinking about debate every day. A lot of people talk about research, but I think even broader than that, whether it's just discussing arguments with your coaches or teammates, or even like at the furthest spectrum, just reading the news once in a while to keep up with different arguments. I think that's really important because it's true that like you need to work hard to be successful at anything, but in debate, I found that working hard is actually not enough. It's not the same as school. Like you don't get check pluses or smiley faces. You actually have to work in a smart way to be successful, just because it's a balance with everything you're doing in your normal life. So it's really important to kind of understand the purpose behind your work, And I think one quote I always like here is this quarterback you can see. He used to play for the Dallas Cowboys, Roger Staubach. He said, spectacular achievements are always preceded by unspectacular preparation, which to me means kind of you have to do the hard work behind the scenes on your free weekends to get where you want to be in debate. And that's always resonated true with me. And I think it's kind of just an important lesson in terms of preparation. Just try to make debate part of your life and something that like you enjoy kind of doing and reading about. And if you're able to do that, you'll, I think, have a lot of success as like a first point. A second point around preparing yourself is I think it's important also to kind of practice speaking every day in terms of making that a habit. The way I think about this is it's important to make it something that feels so habitual that it's weird when you don't do it. I'm a University of Chicago grad, and there's a professor there. His name's Richard Thaler. He used to say he talks about things that are called nudges, and basically it's just kind of small reminders that encourage you to do the right thing. So one of the things I used to do with debate is I used to always have like a timer visible to me near my desk that reminded me, hey, I maybe should speak for a few minutes or practice speaking clearly today. Maybe practice speaking a little quicker and clearer. And that's just a quick way to remind yourself and make it easy to speak and make it so your setup encourages you to do it rather than make it hard for you to do that. And so on this page, there's a couple interesting quotes. Bobby Knight, who's pictured at the right, he was a great basketball coach at Indiana University. He said, quote, "We talk in coaching about winners. Kids have had a lot of them who just will not allow themselves or their team to lose. Coaches call that a will to win. I don't. I think that puts the emphasis in the wrong place. Everyone has a will to win. What's far more important is having the will to prepare to win." And I think that's a really important lesson because the will to kind of speak every day and prepare that way is something that will be different and set you above the rest of your peers, just because it's something that everyone wants to win, but not everyone wants to necessarily put in the time behind the scenes to do that. So I think speaking drills and speaking practice is a great way to do that. The second quote on this page, Vince Lombardi, he's a great former NFL coach. The Super Bowl trophy, actually the championship in football, is named after him. He said the difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of will. And again, it kind of speaks to the same point of how important it is to kind of push that will to prepare to win, not just say you want to win, but do the work to get there. In terms of kind of some other points in preparing yourself, kind of being informed is a critical part of kind of winning debates. And similar to kind of thinking about debate every day, one thing that's important here is if you don't know something, there's plenty of arguments that people will bring up in debate that you've maybe never heard of. I think it's really important to read the primary source material and kind of learn about it. For me, that was mostly critical type arguments. So like things that were based on philosophy or other areas. And I think it's just important to be able to kind of go to that source material, kind of take notes on it the same way you would as if you were reading a book for a class, and maybe just ask questions to your teammates or your coaches, maybe even your lab leaders if you go to a summer camp. And so your main goal should be learning, because if you don't want to spend the time to learn, you shouldn't really expect to understand what you need to know to win and prepare successfully to win at the highest levels of debate. Secondly, I think studying your evidence is really important for preparing yourself as well. Most people don't do all the research in terms of the cards and debate evidence that you're presenting in debates. You get it from different sources, maybe camps, maybe teammates, maybe coaches. So it's really important to get familiar with your evidence the same way that you might study for an exam. Before debates, you want to maybe highlight or customize your files and then be very kind of in tune with what they say so that you can kind of extend them and talk about them to judges in a really kind of succinct and meaningful way. Actually, when I debated at Northwestern, a couple of my old teammates were great at this, and what they did is they used to like basically take notes. So if you have a debate file in a Word document, they used to put in like comment boxes and different boxes and different kind of notes on the side of the file that just kind of said like, here's what I'm thinking about this. They would change the tags, they would change the kind of headers, just so they internalized what it actually meant and they could actually present it in their own kind of language, which I thought was a really interesting way to think about studying your evidence, and something that I definitely recommend to almost everyone. And then the last thing on this slide, just an important thing is just don't, one of the biggest things I've heard about debate, and I love passing on, is just if you never lose to the same argument twice, you will be one of the most successful debaters. And you'll definitely reach, I think, your goals in debate in terms of success. And the reason for that is, if you notice, there's lots of different debate topics. They change every year, but a lot of arguments repeat themselves over and over. And so your ability to really be able to, once you lose to an argument, learn why you lost and make sure you fix the reasons that you lost and learn about it. And if you're able to prevent losing to that argument again, you'll be one of the most successful debaters, probably in your age group, but even in a broader picture. So just an important tip, just debate arguments repeat over and over. So make sure you kind of, if you lose to one, you learn about it and you try to prevent losing to it again. And there's a good quote here from Mike Ditka. He's pictured at the right. He's the former coach of the Chicago Bears. He said, success is about having, excellence is about being. Success is about having money and fame, but excellence is being the best you can be. And I think each of these things, in terms of being more informed, studying your evidence, and never losing to the same argument twice, are really great ways to being the best you can be. And so I thought it's a nice kind of way to think about that. And a few more points in terms of how to prepare yourself. These are more kind of logistical, but first, I think in this era of kind of digital technology, and even more so now with this virtual setup with Zoom and then things like that for debates. I never actually debated on Zoom, so definitely understand there's some intricacies there that maybe I don't even fully understand. But I think it's really important to be able to record your speeches, whether that's just doing an audio recording on your computer while you're speaking, or if you're able to do a video recording, like this lecture is being recorded via video. It's in this age, it's kind of, there's no excuse, I would say, for not being able to kind of find some basic way to record yourself. And the reason for that, the reason why this is important to me, and I think it should be prioritized for a lot of debaters, is it's the best way to improve. I found myself, if you look at the right-hand side of this screen on the slide, that's the Northwestern Debate YouTube channel, where we used to record all of our debates, and we would watch them after we got back from tournaments, especially the ones we lost, but even some of the ones we won, just to learn about how are we speaking, are there things we're doing, any tendencies. So for me, you might already notice in this presentation, I used to say probably or like a lot. I think that's common for a lot of people of our generation. And it's just good to notice those things and try to become more efficient in how you speak, but also you'll notice, hey, maybe I'm not that clear, or maybe I'm speaking too fast or too slow, and you can adjust. And the only way to have that type of reflection is to have some material to learn from. And so definitely try to record all your speeches, and you'll make adjustments based on that if you're able to watch them. A second point on this slide, just this is similar, but you need to recognize how you beat yourself and work really hard in those areas to improve. And so similar to this point of watching your old debates and then learning from them, I used to do that. And I would keep a list actually of things that I noticed that were kind of common, that were issues I had or challenges I had when I was debating. And so people used to ask me like, hey, what do you have to improve on? You guys are already you've already debated 6 or 7 years and you're competing at a high level. And I would actually honestly tell them basically everything. I would have a list actually in my backpack of all things that I used to carry around with me. And I would have several areas each year I kind of tracked for improvement. And I think the reason that really helped me is if you're willing to be a really kind of brutal critic, honestly, of yourself, and understand what beats you in debate, you're able to try to avoid those situations, improve, and just become more aware. Like awareness is honestly one of the first things you need to pick up. And this is a great way to be aware of, hey, this is an issue for me, and I need to think about it more. And that really helps you as you're moving forward, I think. So just think about that and how to reflect on what beats you normally and then how you can improve in those areas. And then last couple things in preparing yourself, I think it's really important to cultivate strong relationships with your partner as well as your coaches and anyone who helps you with debate. This is actually an interesting topic because I think a lot of people, it's almost like any relationship, a friendship, a romantic relationship, whatever. There's always ups and downs, I feel like, in these relationships with partners and coaches. Some things annoy you, some things you love about the person or people you're working with. But I think the most important takeaway here is even if you think you're kind of pulling more weight or you're better or doing a lot more work than the people who are helping you, just make sure you're always trying to figure out the best way to be on the same page with the people who are supporting you in debate. That's the kind of classic, you hear this cliche, but many hands do make light work. And in debate, there's a ton of work that can always be done, whether it's research or practice speeches or going to tournaments or logistics or any of that. And so having like a team that's on the same page is really important to kind of make easier work for everyone. So definitely work on that and establish things like strong friendships as well, even outside of debate. I found that to be super helpful for me. Like I'm still friends with Sarah, who's helping run this event, and she coached me almost a decade ago in high school. So I would just say it's really helpful to cultivate those relationships even outside of debate, because those people then really want to support you and you want to support them, and it can become lifelong in terms of friendship. And that's one of the things you'll take even after you're done with debate. Kind of those lifelong friendships are what really matter. So even though it's maybe not as easy in the moment, definitely recommend kind of finding ways to build strong relationships with your partners and coaches on your team. And then lastly, in this section, in terms of how to prepare yourself, taking breaks is a huge one. And I think for a lot of people in debate, it's tough to balance debate with other priorities in your life. And the reason for that is debate can kind of become all-encompassing. And I think it's important to understand that debate is not all about end results, and actually success is whatever you define success to be. So for me, I think I definitely was one of those people who pushed myself to try to be winning a lot of debate tournaments and winning and winning and winning. And not until I got to college, actually at Northwestern, did I recognize through one of my debate partners, actually, like there's a lot more to debate and a lot more to life. And so just being able to balance those things, finding the right, hey, I need an hour break at least every day to work out, or I need a few hours to finish my homework and study for my exams. That's all good to do. And making sure you keep that time outside of debate for yourself is really important. The main reason being just people get burned out of anything, but debate is definitely one of those areas. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, even debating at the highest levels and really enjoying it, there were a couple times when I thought I was going to stop debating before I graduated college. And I think just thinking about why did you value debate, and really what drives you there, and making sure you make sure it balances in your life will really help you, but also help you later on, because everything in life is kind of a balance, whether it's debate in school, or nowadays I talk about balancing my relationship with my wife and work and socializing. So it's just good to learn those skills earlier rather than later. So would just recommend taking breaks and finding what works for you, and not kind of succumbing to what people tell you is the right thing to do, because everyone has a slightly different need and preference for breaks and working and different work hours. So all that's really important. But I was just going to pause here for a second. So that's kind of all I was going to say about how to prepare yourself. If I'm going to kind of keep going, and if there are questions, just make sure you keep them in your head or write them down, and I will definitely answer them towards the end of the lecture. So the next section is going to be how to prepare against your competition. This is a shorter section, but definitely important in terms of how you approach debate. Once you've prepared yourself, the next thing is really how do you get ready for the people you're going to debate, and this should hopefully help that. So the first kind of point here is know thy enemy. So Sun Tzu is one of my favorite kind of old school philosopher type people. He's from the samurai art of war tradition way back in Japan, and he said this quote, which I think is really interesting: "Know your enemy and know yourself. Find not in fear for 100 battles. Know yourself, but not your enemy. Find level of loss and victory. Know thy enemy, but not yourself. Wallow in defeat every time." And it's a little bit of a dense quote, but it is, if you take a step back and just think about it, it's pretty critical for debate, actually, because if you're able to kind of anticipate and know your opponent's next move before they even make it, you can kind of more adequately defeat those arguments and sculpt your position around their pushback in the first instance, and make sure you're fully answering each part of their argument. And so this quote kind of tells you, hey, if you actually know yourself, which we just talked about in that first section, how to prepare yourself, and you start to get to know your enemy or your competitors, you don't need to worry. You'll be able to be successful. You'll be able to be confident in debate. But if you know yourself and not your enemy, you'll be even. You'll basically be 500. You'll win the same amount of debates as you lose. And the same thing is true if you know your enemy but not yourself. Actually, Sun Tzu says you won't win very much at all. And it's just an interesting kind of quote, I think, that summarizes really well why it's so important to prepare yourself, but also prepare against your competition. The second one here at the bottom of the page, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. It's kind of just a way of saying that you should use, despite saying you should know your enemies and calling competition enemies, you should be able to collaborate with friends and competitors in the debate community to help support your goals, because at the end of the day, it is a community, and hopefully you'll get good intelligence about your opponents, and you should be able to keep up to date on what's happening around you. What we used to do, I would say, that really helped me and would recommend to anyone else is you should kind of keep a list of your top 10 to 15 opponents and make note of how they deploy different arguments, and make sure you're prepared against those arguments even before they read them against you or argue them against you. And the only way you can do that, really, especially when you're at a tournament like this, is to kind of gain scouting intelligence, which you can get from talking to friends in the debate community, coaches, things like that. So I think it's important to recognize the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And in general, it's a broader debate community that you can have support you as you make different decisions in terms of preparing for your competition. And then the last couple points here in terms of how to prepare against your competition. This is an important one. Just prepare to act like you've been there before. What that means is basically many people don't have the experience of being in really intense, big, maybe like championship type debates, obviously, before you get there for the first time. So it's still important, though, to kind of envision yourself in those shoes, and so you can prepare to act like you've been there before. And it's important because you want to follow good models when you do that. The reason for this is some people, when they get to that kind of stage that they've been dreaming of for a long time, they act differently. They act entitled, they act without class, they act like they deserve this more than anyone else. But instead, what you should really model is, in my opinion, is kind of a graceful entrance into this kind of broader stage, and preparing to act like you've been there before means you're just kind of humble and you recognize the situation, even if you haven't been there in the past. And the best way to kind of get that type of knowledge and background is actually to watch others who've been in that situation, like potentially this lecture or other lectures from great people speaking this weekend, and just see how they act in different situations, and even watching some of your competitors who make it to those stages and how they act, and seeing what you like about that and what you don't like, and maybe taking the good things and nixing the things you didn't like or you thought was a little bit out of tune. So that's my recommendation there. There's a quote here on the page in the middle that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, from a Roman philosopher. I think that is how I view getting to these stages of debate that are maybe later and having success at the highest stages. It's, yes, luck in some ways, but you need to have the preparation behind the scenes combined with the opportunity that gives you the chance to get there. And so luck is really what happens when preparation meets opportunity. I think that's a nice way to put how important preparation is in kind of achieving success and making sure you can capitalize on it when you do get lucky. And then lastly, in this section, I think great debaters kind of win with grace and lose with class, is a nice way to put it, and always have a positive attitude and look to improve. And one of the ways you can do that is, we used to call it practice harder than you play. So give practice speeches, give practice arguments, simulating that you're debating against your best opponents. This is really nice because if you prepare for situations that are harder than they probably will be in actuality, simple ways to do this too, like instead of speaking for 8 minutes in your 2AC or 2NC, try to give your arguments in 6 minutes, and see how efficient you can be, and if you can still make a really good case. That can really prepare you better for the real debates, because it's harder than what you're going to be experiencing when you debate the toughest opponents, and you won't be caught off guard in any situation. And so I really recommend that, kind of in terms of how to improve. But just keep in mind, I think the most important thing to prepare against your competition is just to be aware of what they're doing and integrate that and try to anticipate and know what they're going to do before they actually do it. I have a picture of the great debaters here, just to kind of speak to the idea of, hey, winning with grace and losing with class is what you should strive for, in my opinion. And I think many of the great debaters who people look up to actually did that in a really great way. And I definitely thought that that was important to me and would recommend it for others as well. So that's all I had on preparing against your competition. Pretty short section. Just a couple more, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions. So the next section is actually, I skipped this slide, but we kind of talked about this. So kind of practice harder than you play, scout and understand your opponents, and give practice speeches. So nothing crazy, but pretty nice to think through. So the next section I think is interesting. Many debaters, I definitely in your shoes didn't think about this very often, but how to prepare for your judges and the different people who are going to watch you when you debate. So I think there's a lot of different things to think about here. I'll start with kind of the simplest, which I think most people actually do, or hopefully do, which is before any debate, I think it's important to read judge philosophies and understand kind of what the judge openly says they are thinking about when they're thinking about judging your debate. And I think, like, the reason this is important is this is kind of a simple preparation thing. You have this publicly available. You can even, if it's not publicly available, you can ask the judge before the debate starts, just, hey, do you have any preferences in terms of how we debate? Do you prefer speaking quickly or slowly? Any arguments you like? And it's just nice because those extra 5 minutes you spend before a debate learning about your judge will be more important than almost anything else you probably do, because a ton of debate is actually adapting to your situation, whether that's your judges, your competitors, the tournament, the time of year, the arguments. And this is one where you can really adapt nicely if you have the information to do so and it's available. You should take advantage of it. Similar to the second point here, which is you should also take notes of the judge's decision after debate. So most of you probably know or have experienced this, but after a judge makes a decision, in most situations, they will say, I voted for the affirmative or the negative, and here's a couple of reasons why. I personally, actually, in terms of telling a personal anecdote, kept notes of every reason for decision that a judge gave me since my sophomore year of high school. So that was a full last 7 years of my debate career. And it was actually just a big Word document that was searchable and allowed me to kind of go back and see what judges had said in the past, because judges actually, you'll notice, judge you over and over again. There's this limited pool of judges. And I think that that's really important because you learn each time. And if you ask questions to your judges, which is kind of the third point here, that it's important to engage your judges outside of the debate round and decision, and kind of express that curiosity to learn, like, oh, maybe they didn't vote for you, but what were they thinking about that you weren't? I think one of the unique things that we tried to do at Northwestern, and I recommend to a lot of people, is consider asking for the judge's email address and contacting them after the debate tournament and trying to, if there's some question you had about the debate or something you wanted to improve on, just getting their take on it. And I think these emails are really nice because instead of kind of right after the debate where people are emotional or worried about winning or losing, it kind of shows you took a step back, you were thinking about the debate on your own time, and you wanted to just learn from them. Hey, you viewed this differently than me. Any thoughts on how we could be better, or what was persuasive for you that we didn't think about? And I think both of those things can really make a difference in terms of how you improve, but also shows to the judge, which could help you in the future, this idea that, hey, this is a student who's really looking to improve. And that's not something that judges will openly talk about, but in the back of their head, judges know, hey, these kids are really, or these students are really doing their best job to get better. And that makes judges feel like they want to vote for you, which is a small thing, but definitely I think can make a difference in the grand scheme of things in big debates. Sorry. And then the next one, last couple points here in terms of preparing for your judges. I think it's really important to have presence everywhere. So this is actually a really simple point, but one that most people don't think about. Probably should have gone higher up in a preparation lecture. But many people, when they're at tournaments, I guess nowadays it's probably less of an issue because everything has been virtual for now. But when you go back to debating in person at some point, you'll notice people typically like talking about their debates outside of the debates. They'll say things like, oh, we crushed that team and we still, like, it still took the judge an hour to decide, or that judge totally messed up that debate and it wasn't fair and they didn't consider this. And totally fair to have your own opinion about debates. I mean, especially the ones you participate in. But I would just say I would recommend not commenting really about other teams or judges, especially not in a derogatory manner at a debate tournament, because those people will likely debate you again. They'll likely judge you again. And people don't really forget those type of things. And yes, they won't openly say that hurt them or that affected them, or they're trying to get back at you guys because you spoke poorly about them. But it's just good to kind of maintain that presence everywhere, a good kind of attitude, value structure, and showing people, hey, like, I really care about debate and I'm treating it like an activity that I care about and care about others in the activity. And I think that can really set you apart from a lot of people who treat debate purely as a competitive activity and are willing to kind of trash talk and do things that I don't think are really necessary to have success, in my opinion. And a couple last quotes just for preparing for your judges. But John Wooden was a great coach, one of the best college basketball coaches in men's college basketball at UCLA for a long time. He said, winning takes talent, but to repeat takes character. And he also said failing to prepare is like preparing to fail. And I think both of those maybe speak more broadly to preparation, not just preparing for your judges. But the character part, I would say, is how diligent are you in learning from your judges and respecting the judges and activity. And the preparation quote is just speaks to the whole lecture in terms of you really need to prepare, or else you should expect that you're not going to have the outcomes you want. And just thinking about those two quotes, I think will really help guide you for why preparation is so important. Okay, and then just going to move to the last section here, some final thoughts and tips, and then I'm happy to open it up for some Q&A as well. The first one, I think, always debate the arguments, not the teams. It's really important because many people get caught up in, hey, this team won this tournament, or this team won so many debates, so we're not going to be able to beat them. And I think that's a bad way, honestly, of approaching debate. I think every team, yes, they have different skills and qualities, and it's good to know those. Back to the point of preparing for your competition. But if you're debating against a team that's better, you have nothing to lose, in my opinion. I think you just approach it like they're presenting any arguments just like any other team, and do your best in terms of responding and using the resources you have available to yourself to make a good case. On the flip side, if you're debating a team that you think is maybe worse than you are, that's a great opportunity for you to give a perfect speech or improve your speech in efficiency and just make it optimal against someone who's less experienced. So the reason I say it's important to debate the arguments, not the teams, is there's always two sides to an argument. There's not always two sides to a team. If you think one team is the best team of all time and you have that put in your mind, you're not going to really, in my opinion, have a good chance of debating successfully against them, because you've kind of pre-scripted the outcome to say, hey, this team is better than us. And you kind of force yourself into thinking, hey, we're not going to do as well. And that can have a self-fulfilling effect of actually causing you to not perform as well. So if you think about it as arguments, every argument has another side. So if someone says, hey, like, we really think we should regulate water in the US to make it cleaner, especially by putting in restrictions immediately across the US because it's a huge issue. There's another side to that argument, even though it seems like it's a very kind of well-supported position, and you might lean in that direction. There's always arguments you can make against it, whether it's, hey, moving too quickly to regulate water would affect the economy or would limit access to water and make it more expensive for low income and middle income folks. There's just different things you can always think about when you debate the arguments rather than the team. So I think that's really important. Second point here, and kind of the final thoughts and tips. Good debaters, I think, kind of lose pretty, is what I've heard, and great debaters win ugly. So what that means is you just need to understand with each judge what it takes to win, regardless of the circumstances. So you can do anything, like whether that means you're spending most of your prep time early in the debate just learning about how to win a theory argument, maybe it's intrinsicness or conditionality. You should still do that if it's your best shot to win. And I think, like, I have a personal story for this that I think is interesting, which is when we were debating years ago, obviously now I feel old, but when we were debating in the national championship for college debate, in our final debate round, we were debating a great team from Michigan, and it ended up being we took the most amount of prep time that we had ever taken before our second affirmative speech, the 2AC. I took about 6 or 7 minutes of our 10 minutes of prep time. And It definitely wasn't ideal. It wasn't what we planned, but neither my partner nor I really flinched because we prepared for that moment for most of the last decade, honestly. Both of us had debated about 8 years. He had started debating in middle school, so even longer. And we knew that, honestly, like, prep time didn't matter at that moment if we didn't get the 2AC, that first speech we were giving, correct in responding to our opponents. And it kind of illustrates this point. Yes, it wasn't pretty, that we were taking so much preparation time. People in the room were definitely whispering, like, oh, what are they doing at Northwestern? Like, I guess they don't know what they're answering. They're scrambling. But I think the takeaway and the kind of nice kind of punctuation to this story is we were able to put together a decent speech, and we were able to still come out and win that debate at the end of the day, barely, even though it was the least pretty of our preparation time I had ever done, just because it still enabled us to have the right arguments in place. And more importantly, we were able to find the path to victory just by trying to find kind of the right arguments and taking the time and actually spending the time there. So definitely recommend kind of doing anything you need, and even if it's unconventional, like taking prep time or making an argument that you don't always think is a winner, definitely consider it if you think it's your best chance. And I think that's important, that you be willing to go against the thread or the grain of normal, whatever normal means, just to kind of make your chances of winning and preparing to win the most likely. And the last couple points here, and then I can open it up for if there's any questions. So this is a long quote, but Scott Dethridge was the former debate coach at Northwestern before he passed away several years ago, tragically. But he was one of the winningest coaches of all time in college debate. And he had this quote of saying, "Never be afraid of taking calculated risks in your own personal life. Be willing to work longer and harder at your craft than the next person. Never settle for being good at something when you can be great. Learn to be hard on yourself when you don't quite give it your best, and easy on yourself when your best isn't quite good enough. Know that failing means only that you did not achieve your desired goal, and the sooner that you take can't out of your vocabulary, the better." And I think, like, this kind of quote speaks for itself. It's a really nice way of approaching debate, but also any endeavor you have in life, in terms of you can always settle for being good, but it's better to push for being great, and learning to be hard on yourself when you haven't done your best, but also forgiving yourself when you've done your best and it wasn't good enough. And I think that's the best way to move forward in debate and life, with no regrets. And I think, like, this last slide I wanted to talk about, we'll touch on kind of do what you can to make debate your own and useful in your life. I think learning debate from your coaches or whoever you're learning from is great, because they'll teach you how to use debate as a tool, instead of kind of becoming a tool of debate. And you can use debate, what I mean by that is you can use debate to kind of reach your own goals, whether that's, hey, I want to become a lawyer, or I want to become a political activist, or for me it was, I want to go into business and learn about kind of researching investment options and learning about how businesses operate. And it can really set you up for success in a lot of different areas. So just don't be closed-minded. I think the world is a really big place, and don't let debate maybe fully dominate your high school or college experience, even though I do think it was one of the best preparatory tools for me, and it really has set up a lot of people I know for success. And you can kind of see people on this screen. Actually, I included this picture. This is from Northwestern, one of the debate, I think 2011 or 2012 national championship. And all these people are still close friends of mine. I think Luke, you can see on the far right, he's one of the organizers of this weekend. And it's just great to have, like, that community, and also know debate helped set us all up in a way that made us very prepared for future career options, and also was really a fulfilling activity while we did it, both in high school and college. So I would say use debate to help you reach your own goals rather than letting the activity set goals for you. And And I think that's really just a nice way of thinking about it in the bigger picture. And then just lastly, 2 quotes I'll leave you guys with. First, Muhammad Ali, I think the greatest boxer of all time, said he hated every minute of training, but he always lived by the quote, "Don't quit, suffer now, and live the rest of your life as a champion." That's kind of what this lecture is about. Preparation isn't always the prettiest or most fun thing to do. It doesn't get all the screen time that, hey, like speaking at a debate or winning debates or cross-examination or all these other great topics that people are speaking about today that you can learn hopefully later on as well. But it really is the kind of bedrock of success, in my opinion, in debate. And if you kind of suffer through the preparatory stages and do your best, you'll really set yourself up to have a successful career, both in debate and I think outside of it. And then lastly, just wanted to comment, Carl Lewis was a great runner. He said, it's all about the journey, not the outcome. So I think that's a really nice way to put kind of how I view debate now, especially after being out of debate for several years. But even during it, I think like if you're able to kind of just enjoy and love the debate experience as much as you can, it's truly a unique activity. And I think you'll meet some of your best friends and in through debate. That's definitely happened for me. So if you kind of follow some of these tips and just do it the right way and the way that suits you, I think you'll really get everything that you want out of debate and even more, honestly. I know it happened for me, and I am truly grateful. Happy to always do these type of lectures and talks, just because debate was definitely the most influential thing I did in my life, I would say, even more than school or working or anything like that. And so it really shaped who I am today, and couldn't really be who I am without it. So just think about those things. I think preparing is a great way to be successful, and hopefully some of these things were helpful for you. But with that, I'm going to leave it there. I've spoken for a long time. I think there's a couple people who've come in and out of the video room. So if there's anyone who if there's any questions, definitely feel free to put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions about anything related to this topic in terms of preparation or outside of that. So I'll just stick around for a few minutes. Feel free to ask any questions you have. But perfect. Yeah, thanks, Nadia. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope everything goes well this weekend too for anyone participating, and good luck. I mean, it's any debate tournament, especially like a round robin at the national stage, is a big deal. So congratulations on everyone being here, and hopefully this was helpful.